Have you ever paused and quietly asked yourself, why doesn't my body react the way it used to? There was a time, maybe in your 30s or 40s, when just the brush of a hand, a whispered word, or even a fleeting thought could spark something deep inside. A flicker of desire that grew into a blaze without warning. But now, maybe it's different. Maybe the spark takes longer to catch. Maybe you find yourself waiting for a feeling that doesn't arrive quite as quickly or as strongly. And in that moment of silence, doubt creeps in. Is something wrong with me? Let me reassure you right now. Nothing is wrong. You're not broken. You're not fading. You're simply changing. This is the part that no one talks about. Because for decades, men are taught to be strong, to perform, to keep going without hesitation. But no one tells you how desire evolves with age, how masculinity softens, not in weakness, but in wisdom. According to the Mayo Clinic, testosterone levels in men begin to decline around age 30, about 1% each year. That may not sound like much, but over decades, it adds up. By your 60s, that shift becomes noticeable. Your body takes its time now. It listens more. It needs more. But here's the part that matters most. Desire doesn't disappear. It transforms. When you were young, it was wild, like a flash of lightning. Sudden, fast, explosive. Now it's something else entirely. It's the warm glow of embers on a quiet evening. It's the steady flame that doesn't burn out at the first gust of wind. It's deeper, wiser, and in many ways, far more meaningful. David, 66, said something to me once that I've never forgotten. He's been married for 38 years. He smiled and said, "Back in my 20s, intimacy was a race. Now it's a slow dance. I'm not chasing the moment, I'm living in it." And that's what this moment in your life can be. Not a closing door, but an open invitation. An invitation to slow down, to feel more, to let go of pressure and welcome presence, to rediscover not just your body, but your heart, your voice, your connection. So I want to ask you, has the flame gone out, or has it simply changed its rhythm? Because if you're still listening, if you're still willing, you'll find that your fire is very much alive. It just needs something different now. More time, more care, more soul. And once you understand that, you'll see that this chapter, this beautiful, mature, golden chapter, might just be the most vibrant one yet. So let's go deeper. Because now that you understand how your rhythm has changed, it's time to talk about something even more important, the flow that fuels it all. Let's talk about your blood, your circulation, and why keeping that river strong might just be the secret to awakening everything you thought was gone. Ready? Let's move forward. When you were younger, your blood moved like a river in spring, fast, strong, full of life. Back then, you didn't have to think twice. A single thought, a single glance, and your body responded almost immediately. The pulse quickened, sensations surged. Everything worked as if by instinct. But now, that river is quieted. It still flows, yes, but not as fast, not as easily, and sometimes not exactly where or when you want it to. This isn't something people talk about at dinner tables or in casual conversation, but it matters because blood flow is the foundation of pleasure, vitality, and connection. In men, reduced circulation can mean erections aren't as firm or reliable. In women, it can mean less natural lubrication, less sensitivity. It's not about losing function. It's about needing a new way to support it. Let me tell you about George. He's 71, a retired school principal. For years, he noticed changes he couldn't quite explain, until one afternoon, after a doctor's visit, he finally understood. His blood pressure was creeping up, his circulation was slowing down, and it wasn't just affecting his heart, it was affecting his most intimate moments. His doctor gave him a simple piece of advice. Walk. Every day. Just 30 minutes. So George did. At first it was awkward, just a few blocks alone, feeling unsure. But after a few weeks, something changed. He started sleeping better. His mood lifted. And yes, his body responded more fully when it mattered most. What he discovered is what science now confirms. According to the American Heart Association, just 30 minutes of brisk walking each day can reduce the risk of erectile dysfunction by up to 40% in men over 60. That's not magic. That's movement. That's blood finding its way again. And it doesn't stop there. If you want to boost blood flow even further, nature has already written the recipe. Walnuts, just 2 tablespoons a day, rich in arginine, a compound that widens blood vessels. Dark chocolate, green leafy vegetables, and beets, packed with nitric oxide boosters. Even deep breathing, like the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. That one act, done before intimacy, can help you calm your nervous system, center your emotions, and improve circulation. The real lesson? Desire doesn't start in your mind. It starts in your veins. You don't need to force it. You just need to fuel it. Because when your blood flows freely, so does everything else. Energy, connection, and confidence. George told me once, I thought I had to chase passion like I did when I was 30. Turns out, I just had to walk toward it. So take that walk. Eat those walnuts. Breathe deeper. Because you're not losing your spark. You're learning how to fan it in a new way. And speaking of new ways, let's talk about something that often goes unnoticed, yet can quietly pull the plug on passion if we're not paying attention. The medications you take every day. Could they be turning down the volume on your desire without you even realizing it? Let's explore that next. George was doing everything right. He walked every morning. He cut down on sugar. He even started sprinkling walnuts into his oatmeal like clockwork. But something still felt off. His energy had picked up, but his desire, his fire, still dim. So during his next checkup, he asked his doctor, quietly, almost embarrassed, if something else might be going on. And that's when he heard it. It could be your medication. You see, what most men don't realize is that certain everyday medications can quietly dull desire. We're talking about blood pressure meds like beta blockers or diuretics, antidepressants, SSRIs, even some cholesterol-lowering drugs. These pills are life-saving in many ways, but they can also affect blood flow, nerve sensitivity, and even hormone balance, the very systems that support desire and performance. And the most challenging part? They do it silently. No warnings, no dramatic side effects, just a slow fade until you start questioning yourself instead of your medicine cabinet. Let me tell you about another man, Raymond. He's 64, a widower, recently remarried. For months, he blamed himself for not feeling like a man in his new relationship. He tried vitamins, more sleep, less caffeine, but nothing worked until his pharmacist gently asked, "Are you still on that older blood pressure prescription?" Turns out, a small switch, just a change in the type of medication, made all the difference. No, it wasn't instant, but within a few weeks, the spark returned. Not as a thunderclap, but as a steady hum. Enough to remind him, I'm still here. I'm still capable. Here's the truth many men need to hear. It's not always about aging. Sometimes it's about awareness. So don't suffer in silence. Talk to your doctor. Ask the hard questions. Say the thing that feels uncomfortable, because a small adjustment might bring back a big part of yourself. And don't ever feel ashamed. Your health, physical and emotional, is worth advocating for. So what's the takeaway? If you've been feeling a quiet decline, even while taking care of your health, take a second look at what's in your medicine cabinet, because your desire isn't gone. It might just be muted. And the first step to turning it back up is giving yourself permission to ask why. Now, once you've cleared those medical blocks, it's time to relearn something most men overlook. That intimacy isn't a performance. It's a dance, one that begins long before the bedroom, and often long before a single word is spoken. Let's talk about the power of touch and why foreplay matters more than ever. When we're young, touch often feels like a spark, sudden, electric, and fast. A kiss could turn into fire. A look could turn into longing. It all happens so quickly, so effortlessly. But as time passes, something shifts. The fire doesn't disappear. It just asks for something different. Not speed, not urgency, but time and tenderness. That's when you begin to understand the truth that youth often rushes past. Foreplay isn't a step toward intimacy. It is intimacy. Let me tell you about James and Linda. They've been married for 42 years. A few years ago, James noticed things changing. Their evenings weren't as close as they once were. Touch became less frequent, and when it did happen, it felt awkward, mechanical, hesitant. He began to fear he was losing something. Maybe they were losing something. So instead of chasing what used to be, James decided to try something different. He didn't start with the goal of sex. He started with touch, a simple shoulder rub while watching TV, holding her hand longer at the dinner table, brushing her hair back behind her ear and saying, "You're still the most beautiful woman I know." At first, Linda was surprised. Then she softened, and something changed, not overnight, but steadily. They found a rhythm again, not the wild sprint of their 20s, but the deep, quiet knowing of two people who've grown through life together. That's the lesson many men overlook. Foreplay matters more than ever after 60. Not just for your partner, but for you. Because when your body takes longer to respond, touch becomes the doorway, slowness becomes the spark, and pleasure, it's no longer about performance. It's about presence. Here's something practical you can try tonight. Set aside just 10 minutes. No distractions. No pressure. No expectations. Just sit together. Hold hands. Touch each other's face gently. Say something kind, not about the past, but about this moment. About now. Let it be quiet. Let it be enough. That's foreplay at its most powerful. The art of reminding each other, "I'm still here. I still choose you." And if you've been out of practice, don't worry. Touch is like a language. Even if you've forgotten the words, your hands will remember the way. All it takes is a little time and a little courage to begin. Because once you do, you'll realize that desire was never lost. It was just waiting for you to slow down long enough to feel it again. Now that you've begun to reconnect through touch, let's go deeper into a topic most men avoid, but one that might just hold the key to unlocking confidence, calm, and even better connection with your partner. Let's talk about self-love, not as escape, but as a meaningful way to know your body and nurture it at every age. Some topics carry silence with them, not because they're shameful, but because no one ever taught us how to speak about them with honesty and dignity. Masturbation is one of those topics, and yet, it might just be one of the most important acts of self-understanding and self-care a man can embrace as he grows older. Let's clear something up right away. Masturbation isn't a substitute for connection. It's a form of connection with yourself. When you were younger, it may have been impulsive, hurried, maybe even filled with guilt. But now it can become something else entirely. It can be a practice of slowing down, of rediscovering how your body responds, of learning what brings you pleasure, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Because here's the truth. Touching yourself with intention can teach you to feel again, without pressure, without expectation, without shame. David, 67, told me something powerful. After his divorce, he felt disconnected from women, yes, but even more from himself. He didn't know what he wanted anymore, didn't know what his body was capable of, didn't know if desire still lived inside him. So he started small. Once a week, he'd take a warm shower, light a candle, put on soft music, jazz mostly, and for a few quiet minutes, he gave himself permission to explore without judgment. And what he discovered wasn't just sensation, it was peace, a soft return to himself. He found that masturbation wasn't just physical release, it was emotional reconnection, and science backs this up. According to the National Institutes of Health, over 70% of men over 60 continue to masturbate regularly. Why? Because it reduces stress, improves sleep, increases oxytocin and dopamine, the very chemicals that spark connection and emotional warmth. It's not a replacement for partnership, but it does support it. In fact, men who understand what brings them pleasure alone are more likely to communicate those needs openly in relationship. And that honesty, that vulnerability, that's what builds real intimacy. So here's a gentle idea. If you've felt disconnected from your body, if desire has felt distant, try carving out just 5 minutes a week. Not in secret, not in shame, but as a gift to yourself. Use soft lighting, music you love. Experiment with different kinds of touch, lighter, slower, more present. Listen, not just with your hands, but with your breath. And remember, you're not trying to prove anything. You're simply remembering what it feels like to be fully alive. Because self-love isn't selfish. It's restorative. It's healing. And in later life, it's more important than ever. So don't hide from it. Honor it. Let it become part of your journey back to joy. Now, while self-connection brings strength and insight, there's still one instrument in this orchestra that many forget to tune. Your heart. Not just emotionally, but physically. Because no matter how much you desire, if your heart isn't strong enough to support it, your body will struggle to follow. Let's talk about that next. About circulation, stamina, and how to keep your inner symphony playing in harmony. Your body is like a symphony. Every organ, every cell, every breath, a note in the music of your life. And at the center of that symphony, the conductor that keeps everything in rhythm, is your heart. You might not think about it often. After all, it beats quietly, faithfully, without asking for attention. But when it falters, everything else does too, including your ability to feel pleasure, to stay energized, to connect. Because desire isn't just a feeling. It's a physiological event. And without strong blood flow, strong rhythm, strong pressure, that event struggles to begin. Michael, 72, a jazz drummer in his younger years, once told me, "Back then, my hands could keep any beat, but I never thought I'd have to train my heart to keep time with my passion." After a mild cardiac episode, he noticed a shift, not just in his stamina, but in his sense of intimacy. He wanted to feel close, but his body hesitated. So he began treating his heart like he used to treat his music, with care, with patience, with daily practice. And it worked. He changed his meals, more greens, less salt. He walked every evening before sunset, and he swapped his afternoon coffee for a warm cup of green tea. It sounds simple, but studies, like the one from the University of Tokyo, show that EGCG, a compound in green tea, can improve blood vessel flexibility and increase blood flow by up to 20%. And the results? Michael didn't become 30 again. He became present, capable, in tune with his own body. And in his words, "I started hearing the music again, not in my ears, but in my skin." Here's the truth. Your heart doesn't just keep you alive. It keeps your desire alive, too. A healthy cardiovascular system means more stamina during intimacy, better oxygen to your brain and muscles, faster recovery, and a deeper, more relaxed state of connection. But it also means something even more important, that you're investing in your whole life, not just the moments behind closed doors. So how do you strengthen your heart? Gently, steadily. Add a brisk 20 to 30-minute walk into your day. Cut just 1 teaspoon of added sugar from your morning routine. Swap red meat for fatty fish twice a week. Breathe deeper. Laugh more. Stress less. Small things, but consistent. And in time, you'll feel your own rhythm returning. Because when the heart is in tune, your whole body listens. And so does your partner. So don't ignore it. Don't wait for warning signs. Tend to your heart, like a craftsman tending to his finest instrument. And while your physical heart is essential, there's another kind of rhythm that needs attention too. Not the beat of arteries, but the beat of words, of emotions, of connection. Because even with the healthiest heart, if you and your partner aren't talking, if you're not seen, not heard, intimacy can fade like a song with no lyrics. So let's go there next. Let's talk about communication and how honest, open conversation can reignite more than just understanding. It can reignite love. The truth is, we grow up learning how to do many things. How to work, how to save, how to fix things that break. But very few of us were ever taught how to speak. About longing, about desire, about what we truly feel in the quiet space between two people. Especially after 60. By then, many couples have been together for decades. And somewhere between the grocery lists and doctor's visits, between bills and family birthdays, the conversations change. They get shorter, safer, more about logistics than love. And slowly, silently, the intimacy of words fades, long before the intimacy of the body does. But here's the beautiful truth. It's never too late to rewrite the script. Paul, 69, had been married for 41 years. He told me that he and his wife hadn't had a real conversation about sex in more than a decade. Not because they didn't love each other, but because they assumed. They assumed the other was no longer interested. They assumed silence was safer than rejection. Until one evening, over tea, not wine, Paul simply said, "I miss the way we used to touch, and I'd love to know what feels good for you now." That sentence cracked something open, not just in her, but in him. It wasn't smooth. They stumbled, laughed, even cried a little. But in that moment, they remembered something they had forgotten for years. Intimacy begins with honesty. So how do you start? It doesn't need to be dramatic. You don't need a candlelit dinner or a grand gesture. Start with a question. Start with a memory. Start with a moment of truth, however small. Try saying, "I've been thinking about how our connection has changed. What do you miss most?" Do you ever wish we could talk more openly about what we both want? Or even, can we make time just for us this week? Not for anything else, just for closeness. You'd be surprised how much opens up when one person makes the first move, with words. And if it feels awkward at first, that's okay. It means it matters. Remember, you're not trying to impress. You're trying to reconnect. And your vulnerability, your willingness to speak, is the most powerful gift you can give your partner. Because communication isn't just about saying the right thing. It's about creating safety, so both people can show up fully as they are. So tonight, before you turn on the TV or scroll through your phone, pause, turn toward the person beside you, and just ask, "How are you really?" Because the moment you open your mouth with love, the heart listens, and sometimes desire returns simply because we make space for it again. Now that you've rediscovered the power of conversation, there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore. Not physical, not verbal, but something just as vital. Connection. The kind that happens not behind closed doors, but out in the world. Because as much as intimacy begins within, it thrives in community. Let's talk about something many men silently struggle with: loneliness, and how reconnecting with others might be exactly what you need to feel whole again. There's a kind of silence that's louder than any noise. It doesn't shout. It lingers quietly in the corners of your day, in the chair across from you at the breakfast table, in the phone that doesn't ring, in the smile you still remember but haven't seen in a while. That silence is loneliness, and for many men after 60, it creeps in without warning, not because they're unloved, but because life slowly pulls people apart, retirement, relocation, loss. And suddenly, even if you're surrounded by others, you feel invisible. But here's the truth no one tells us. Loneliness doesn't just dull your mood. It dims your desire. Studies from the University of Oxford show that men over 60 who have at least 3 close social connections reduce their risk of depression by nearly 30%. And where there's more joy, there's more energy, more confidence, more openness to intimacy, both emotional and physical, because we are wired for connection, not just with one partner, but with the world. Take Ron, for example. He was 73, widowed, and hadn't felt a spark of passion in years, not because of age, not because of illness, but because he was alone. His days were quiet, his nights even quieter, until one weekend, his grandson helped him join a local men's walking group. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't about feelings. They just walked, talked, laughed, shared stories about fishing, football, aging knees, and stubborn hearts. And something began to shift. Within weeks, Ron's mood lifted. He started sleeping better. He even reconnected with an old friend from church. And then, one evening, while listening to music alone, he felt something stir inside. Not sadness, but life. Because that's what connection does. It reminds you, you still matter. You're still someone's friend, someone's father, someone's companion, and maybe, just maybe, someone's future partner. So how do you begin, especially if it's been a while? You don't need a big plan. Call one old friend this week. Just 10 minutes. Visit your local library or coffee shop and say hello. Join a walking club, a community garden, or a volunteer group, or simply write a letter. Yes, a letter to someone you miss, because the smallest act of reaching out can open the biggest door to warmth. And here's the quiet miracle. As connection returns to your life, so does desire. Not always as fire, sometimes just a flicker, but enough to light the path forward. So ask yourself tonight, who could I reach out to this week? Who have I lost touch with? Not just in life, but in heart. Because when you begin to open up to others again, you also open yourself to joy. And joy is where intimacy begins. Now that we've explored how connection outside the bedroom feeds what happens within it, let's bring things full circle, back to the space between you and your partner. Because as your world becomes fuller, your desire becomes more curious. Let's explore how to keep intimacy alive through creativity, comfort, and little sparks of wonder. Even without youth, without urgency, desire can bloom again. Let's talk about that next. Desire doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it slips in through a song, or the warm glow of a lamp, or a memory you thought you had forgotten, until a certain scent or melody brought it gently back. Because intimacy after 60 isn't about fireworks. It's about atmosphere. And the right atmosphere can do what pills and pressure never will. It can awaken something quiet, tender, real. Joan and Richard, both in their 70s, had once let intimacy fade into the background, not from lack of love, but from years of routine. Then one evening, their granddaughter left behind a Bluetooth speaker. Joan, on a whim, played an old Ella Fitzgerald tune. Richard looked up from his book. Joan swayed in the kitchen, just a little, and without a word, he stood, walked over, and held her. They didn't speak. They just moved. Slowly. Together. That night, they didn't just rediscover touch. They rediscovered the feeling that came before it. That's the power of mood. You don't need roses and candlelight. You need presence, intention. You need to tell your body and your spirit, this moment matters. So here are a few ways to begin setting that kind of space. Music. Create a playlist of songs that hold meaning for you. First dances, road trips, love letters and sound. Lighting. Turn off the overheads. Use lamps, warm bulbs, or a single flickering candle. Dim light quiets the mind and opens the heart. Scent. A drop of lavender oil, a spritz of your old cologne, or the smell of fresh linen. Fragrance is memory in motion. Memory. Bring out an old photo. Share the story behind it. Say, remember when, and see what that stirs. These aren't tricks. They're invitations. Because what many forget is that foreplay begins hours before a touch. It begins in the way you set the room, in the way you slow down the night, in the way you show your partner, without saying a word, that you're still here and still interested. And when you do that, you don't need elaborate moves or perfect bodies. You need only to be present. Because in this season of life, passion doesn't rush, it lingers. It listens, and it blooms slowly in the warmth you create. So tonight, instead of turning on the news or reaching for your phone, turn on the music, lower the lights, let memory rise, and invite desire to return, not as something to chase, but as something you gently welcome home. Now, there's one last piece to this puzzle, and it might be the most important of all, because even with all the tools, touch, connection, care, there's one thing that keeps intimacy alive more than anything else: the courage to stay curious, to keep learning, exploring, and creating new ways to love at any age. Let's talk about that next. At some point in life, many people start to believe a quiet lie. That desire fades with age, that it belongs to youth, that after a certain point, it's time to let it go. But the truth? Desire doesn't disappear. It just asks for a different kind of invitation. Not one built on perfection, but on creativity. David and Carol had been together for 45 years. They knew each other's routines, each other's habits, sometimes too well. But one rainy Sunday, while flipping through old photos, Carol found a picture of them dancing barefoot at the beach. And she said, smiling, "Remember that night?" David did. So they recreated it, right there in the living room. No sand, no ocean, just music, a bottle of wine, and socks on a wooden floor. And something shifted, not because it was flawless, but because it was playful, new, alive. As we age, the path to intimacy doesn't close. It widens, if we're brave enough to step off the well-worn road. That means trying a new position that feels better for your body, sharing a fantasy you've never spoken aloud, using a massage oil, a new scent, or even humor to break the ice, or writing down your most tender memory together and reading it out loud. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about exploring the emotional space between you with fresh eyes. Because when you let go of needing it to be like it once was, you give it permission to become something even better. And here's the secret. The older you get, the more freedom you have. You've already lived through the pressure, the proving, the performance. Now, you can write your own rules. You can lead with curiosity instead of certainty, with laughter instead of expectation, with honesty instead of fear. So tonight, ask yourself, what's one small thing I've never tried that I'd like to? It could be a song, a conversation, a gesture, a new way to hold someone you've held 1,000 times before. And if you're not sure, start with a whisper, a hand on a shoulder, a note on the nightstand, something that says, I'm still here, and I still want to discover you. Because intimacy, in the end, isn't about how much you know. It's about how much you're still willing to learn. And now, let's bring everything we've explored together into one final reflection. Because this journey isn't just about restoring passion. It's about remembering something deeper. You are still capable of deep love, full joy, and vibrant connection. Not in spite of your age, but because of it. So now, here we are, at the end of this conversation, but perhaps the very beginning of something more. You've just walked through 10 quiet, powerful truths. Not rules, not formulas, but invitations. To listen to your body in a new way. To speak honestly with your partner. To reconnect with yourself, gently, patiently, and without apology. You've seen that desire doesn't vanish. It evolves. It deepens. And when you meet it with curiosity instead of shame, it answers. Let's take a moment to remember what you now carry with you. Your rhythm has changed, but the music hasn't stopped. Your blood is a river. Move, nourish, let it flow. Medication may mute you. Don't be afraid to speak up. Touch matters, slow, intentional, honest. Self-love is self-respect, quiet, powerful, healing. Your heart is the conductor. Treat it like the sacred thing it is. Communication builds bridges, no matter how long it's been. Loneliness isn't your fate, connection is. Atmosphere changes everything. Music, light, and memory are your allies. And creativity, it matters more than perfection always. You don't have to be young to feel deeply. You just have to be open. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to keep showing up with kindness, with courage, and with love. Because this chapter of life, it's not a decline. It's a rediscovery. And you get to write it. One moment, one choice, one breath, one touch at a time. If this video made you feel seen, if it reminded you that the fire is still there, even if it burns differently now, then let that feeling stay with you a little longer. Leave a comment and share what part of this journey touched you most. Drop the number from 1 to 10 so I know where your heart paused. And if you're ready for more stories, more real conversations, more reminders that life after 60 is still full of color and depth, subscribe. Because you're not alone. There's a world of men out there, just like you, who are learning not how to go back, but how to go deeper. And I'm honored to walk this road with you. Until next time, take care of your heart. Take time for your joy. And remember, desire doesn't fade. It just waits for you to meet it where you are.